Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a sudden and honestly pretty massive Windows 11 UI update that is literally keeping enterprise teams awake at night right now. We're talking about a really subtle change in Microsoft Edge that, if you leave it unmanaged, blows a giant data governance loophole right into your freshly provisioned hardware. By the time we wrap up today, you'll understand exactly how your corporate credentials might be quietly slipping completely outside your perimeter and, more importantly, precisely how to slam that door shut. So picture this. An endpoint admin at your company opens up a freshly enrolled Windows 11 laptop. They launch Microsoft Edge just to test things out, and boom, right there on the screen, they're hit with a prompt to sign in and sync. But sitting prominently right next to the usual Microsoft button is a Google option. Now sure, it's always been technically possible, but Edge is suddenly pushing this Google sign-in path way more aggressively. If this is a personal device, totally fine. But on a managed corporate endpoint, you've just stumbled onto a major data governance problem. Here's the quick roadmap for our explainer today. We'll hit the Google sign-in problem, the data sovereignty risk, 3 essential Edge policies you need to know, how to deploy those policies, and finally, verifying your defenses. Let's get right into Section 1, the Google sign-in problem, a new UI update. The core mechanic you really got to understand here is that Edge's browser profile sync simply does not discriminate. It works exactly the same way whether the identity checking in is a personal Microsoft account, a managed EntraID work account, or a personal Google account. Because Edge is now surfacing that Google sign-in path so heavily, if an employee just clicks it on their work laptop, it kicks off a totally automatic, comprehensive sync process. It starts treating their personal Google Cloud exactly as it would your highly managed corporate environment. Moving to Section 2, the data sovereignty risk, corporate data leakage. Now, this is where a lot of folks get it wrong, so let's clear it up. When IT teams see unexpected sign-in prompts, they instantly think, oh no, device code phishing, credential theft, hackers. But actually, scratch that. This isn't a traditional security vulnerability. We aren't panicking about hackers breaking in today. The risk here is data sovereignty. This is strictly about highly regulated corporate data willfully leaving Microsoft's controlled cloud boundary, all because an employee clicked the wrong, super convenient button. To really grasp how bad this is, think about what actually syncs when you log into a browser. Once they sign in with Google, Edge starts pushing everything straight to Google servers. We're talking saved passwords for your internal admin portals. It syncs browsing history, which means every URL to internal systems, SharePoint libraries, and, yikes, sensitive Teams deep links. It pulls bookmarks, typed form fill data, the whole shebang. If an employee uses a personal Google account, all of this highly sensitive corporate data completely bypasses your Microsoft Purview DLP and Intune compliance checks. If you're in finance or healthcare, your compliance teams literally have zero visibility into what Google is doing with that data. And here is where it turns into an absolute offboarding nightmare. Let's say you have an employee who's been diligently saving their internal passwords into Edge, and that profile is happily syncing to their personal Google account. Well, if you fire that employee and revoke their access in EntraID, it does absolutely nothing to the passwords already sitting in their Google Sync. When they walk out the door, those synced corporate credentials and internal links go right out the door with them in their personal cloud. Let's look at how to fix this in Section 3. 3 essential Edge policies, the security triad. Thankfully, Microsoft gives us 3 distinct Edge policies to fix this, and you absolutely must deploy them together as a triad for a foolproof defense. Think of it like a 3-legged stool. You need all 3. First, the non-MicrosoftAccountSignInEnabled policy needs to be set to 0, which just disables the non-Microsoft button entirely. Second, BrowserSignin should be set to 2. This forces users to sign in, so Edge always has an authenticated profile. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, RestrictSigninToPattern must be configured with a regex pattern, like .star@contoso.com, to ensure only your specific corporate accounts match. You really need to watch out for this major gotcha. If you just force a sign-in by setting browser sign-in to 2, but you don't restrict the domain pattern, Edge is going to demand an account, sure, but it will happily accept a personal Microsoft account. It'll take an Outlook.com or a Hotmail address, no problem. That still lets completely unregulated accounts slip right through your perimeter. You always have to pair the forced sign-in with your specific corporate domain pattern to lock it down completely. On to Section 4. How to deploy policies, Intune Settings Catalog. Now, if you're an Intune admin, you are going to love this because it is ridiculously straightforward. All 3 policies are natively available right there in the Settings Catalog. You don't need any custom OMA-URIs for most setups. You just open your settings catalog, navigate to Microsoft Edge, then click Identity and Sign In. Add all 3 settings to a single configuration profile. Disable the non-Microsoft accounts, force the browser sign-in, enable the domain restriction, and punch in your regex. Then just assign it to your managed Windows device groups and you're golden. But hey, not everyone uses the Intune settings catalog, right? If you're relying on custom OMA-URI profiles, scripting, or Graph API calls, here are the data types you'll need. The sign-in toggle and browser force policies are just integers. You set them to 0 and 2. The domain restriction is a string where you drop your regex. And if you're in a standalone environment using traditional group policy, don't worry. All 3 of these live conveniently under the Identity and Sign-in folder in the latest Microsoft Edge ADMX templates. Finally, Section 5, verifying your defenses, checking endpoints. Okay, we've deployed the policies, but we can't just cross our fingers and hope they worked. You can proactively hunt for unmanaged profiles by running a quick PowerShell one-liner as the logged-on user to check their Edge preferences file. This tells you instantly if a personal account is actively syncing. And to make sure your Intune sync actually landed on the machine, you can run a script as an admin to check the machine-level policy hive in the registry. You want to see those 3 specific keys sitting securely in the local machine software policies path. Or if you just want to do a quick visual check right at the user's desk, Microsoft Edge for Business gives you a really clear visual cue on the profile avatar itself. When your policies apply successfully and the user is signed in with EntraID, you'll see this little work briefcase badge on their avatar. That means you're good. The managed identity is locked in. But if you look at an endpoint and you see a colored circle with initials, or worse, a Google profile picture, your policy hasn't applied yet. You need to force a group policy update or an Intune sync right away. All right, that brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with this one pretty provocative question to take back to your security team today. Are your corporate credentials and internal SharePoint links silently syncing outside your boundary right now? Because trust me, the massive risk of browsing history leaving your controlled cloud is absolutely not offset by whatever tiny convenience Google Sync gives a user on a corporate machine. Their Entra identity already gives them all the cross-device sync they'll ever need. I highly encourage you to go verify your own environments, review your Edge policies, and make absolutely sure that triad of settings is locked in. Thanks so much for joining me today.